I have an experience I really want to share. I feel like this has kind of been, sounds so lame to say this, but a long time coming. I have been talking a lot on the podcast recently about psychedelics, and at the beginning of the year, I had a very wild experience with a particular psychedelic, perhaps one that, one that isn't talked about that much. If you're into your ethnogens, then you've probably heard of it. If you haven't heard of Iboga, then that's fine. I'm going to explain to you what it is. This is an episode where it's not really an educational episode. Not that I feel I need to do that anymore because you have the internet. This is more going to be about my experience with this particular medicine, but I guess to set the stage, it is worth talking about what Iboga is, particularly if you've never heard of this psychedelic. And some people don't even consider this a psychedelic. It is definitely a plant medicine, a plant teacher, but it kind of operates almost in its own category of psychoactivity. It's not, at least in my experience, which we'll get into, it's not like anything else I have ever tried before. And I am a trisexual. I like to try lots of different things. So Iboga is a plant. Specifically, Iboga is the root bark of the Tabernanthe Iboga shrub, which is native to Central and West Africa. So particularly the areas of Gabon, Cameroon, and the Republic of the Congo. So it's a medicine that's been used for centuries in a spiritual tradition called the Bwiti, and it's used for initiation ceremonies, healing, religious practices, rites of passage. And the root bark naturally contains dozens of psychoactive alkaloids. Now, perhaps you've heard of ibogaine. Ibogaine is different to Iboga. Like I said, Iboga naturally contains dozens of psychoactive alkaloids, and ibogaine is one of those alkaloids. So it's the primary psychoactive compound in Iboga, and it's responsible for a lot of its psychological effects. So what I want to do here is just talk about my preparation for this plant medicine undertaking, including the microdosing and the streaming dose. I want to talk about my anxiety going into it, things that were coming up, things that worried me, things that scared me. And then, I'm going to talk a little bit. No, I'm not going to talk a little bit. I am going to talk about the actual experience, which they call a flood dose. That's when you do like the full dosage of the Iboga. And then, I'll get into integration, reflections, and kind of post Iboga life. I prepared for Iboga for 5 months. It was like I had heard about it many, many, many years before. It's certainly not as much in the public psychedelic discourse as ayahuasca or psilocybin, but I had heard about it many years before trying it through one friend. I remember him saying, I'm going to do this thing, and I was like, whoa, okay, cool. And he came back from it, and I said, how was it? And he said, yeah, it was hard. And then once I signed up, I was just on this like really militant and dedicated and diligent preparation journey, which I'm super proud of. 5 months, I changed up my supplements, focusing a lot on magnesium, electrolytes, and stuff that was going to assist my heart. The thing with Iboga is it's very, very stimulating, and the reason that when people go into the clinics and do ibogaine, they're hooked up to the cardiac machines is because it can intercept with the electricity of your heart. So I was like, all the health stuff that you need to do, all the checks and balances that you need, like I'll do them. So I got my bloods done. I wore a Holter monitor for 48 hours to monitor my heart activity, just to make sure that everything was all good there. It was interesting kind of going to the doctor and asking for that and having to navigate like, how honest do I be about why I want this, knowing that this is, experimental medicine. Like for me, it's my personal experiment with a plant medicine. I ate really well, which I do anyway. I started meditating I was already meditating quite seriously because this was the next initiatory challenge in my life from doing Vipassana the year previous. And I'm actually really glad that I had the Vipassana practice, because when I came out of that 10-day Vipassana retreat of like 12 hours of meditation a day, 6 months prior to doing my Iboga ceremony, I was just so in the practice. The preparation for Iboga really taught me that like preparation for doing psychedelics is in your lifestyle. I think it's a lifestyle thing. Like you notice that journaling, meditating, eating well, getting my supplements right are all not like crazy preparatory things. They're kind of just lifestyle things, right? And the microdosing part of Iboga was interesting. I don't know if this is part of everyone's preparatory thing when they embark on an Iboga journey, but for my facilitators were they were like, you microdose, you meet the medicine beforehand, and you get acquainted with the spirit, and you do that through microdosing. So for about 5 weeks I was on a protocol, which was like sub-perceptive dose that you measure out yourself, 3 days on, 4 days off, or 4 days on, 3 days off, something like that. And then in the lead up to the ceremony, you're off the microdoses for 10 days or 2 weeks. And whilst I was doing that, the microdosing, all of my triggers started coming up. And it is interesting. I often wonder, did all my triggers come up when I was microdosing because I was microdosing, or because I was told that when you microdose Iboga before you've had a flood dose, this can happen? I went through a period of my life where I had quite intense pelvic pain, more specifically bladder pain, and that I had worked really, that was, from my understanding, it was a nervous system thing, like a psychosomatic chronic stress response thing that was going on. And I had worked really hard to fix that, although what it ended up being was like I needed to work less hard. I needed to just be doing less and chilling. But my pelvic pain was non-existent, and that reared back up. Yeah, a lot of things came up, and that really did affect my intention, which I'll also share in a bit. I was trying to see that as just like a really important part of the journey, preparing me to like set my final intention. So another part of the preparatory process was doing what's called a streaming dose, like a significant jump from the micro dose, but not as much as my flood dose would be for the ceremony. I was able to do that by myself in my own home. I let my partner know I was doing it, and I had at that point already been microdosing, and I was like not 100% sure what the experience would be, but I was confident that I would be able to handle it, whatever. The streaming dose, I ended up doing 8 grams. It took, I think I started doing the doses in increments from 2 p.m. in the afternoon, set the whole day, the whole next day aside to do this. Yeah, nothing was really happening until about 6 p.m. And at that point I'd taken 8 grams, and then all of a sudden I was like, woof, I am awake and I feel kind of high. It was interesting because at that point it was just kind of like at that dosage, it was just kind of like a cruisy sort of high. Yeah, I didn't feel sober, but I wasn't tripping. And as the night kind of kicked on, I was able to eat. My boyfriend and I had dinner together. We got into bed and hung out in bed for a little bit, and then he falls asleep because that's what you do at night. You get into bed and you go to sleep, and I am awake. And normally, this is the interesting thing too with one of the interesting things is normally if you're in bed awake and the night's ticking on, I would be anxious about that. I gotta get up tomorrow morning. I'm gonna feel like absolute crap all day because I haven't slept. It's gonna be this. Yeah, it's this, you realize you work up so much anxiety over your future problems without even knowing how you're going to feel. And sure, in the past, yeah, when I've not been able to sleep because I've been up anxious or I've been up overthinking, whatever, the next day does feel like crap. But in this case, being up and stimulated, and also we all know the feeling of when you're younger and you go out and you party too much and then you get home and you can't sleep, and that's a bad feeling. That's an anxiety inducing feeling for good reason. But with this, it was not like that at all. I was up and I was contemplating. My mind was extremely active. I was having a lot of ideas. Once the sun went down and the lights in our house went down, there was kind of shooting kind of, they call them the swords, the Iboga swords, shooting lights coming out of either side of my ears, but which I couldn't quite catch them either. It's you wonder, are they spirits or what's going on? And yeah, so that was kind of happening, but I was just calm, I just was calm and not overthinking what the next day was going to be like, and really bolstered by, I guess, the medicine, to not to just let things unfold and to not worry about what the future consequences of that would be. And so I was awake the whole night, and then sunrises, I'm like lying there in bed, my boyfriend wakes up, his alarm goes off, he goes out and does his morning movement practice, and then I kind of like rolled around in bed still for another couple of hours, and at 8 a.m. I came out into the living room, and I was awake and calm and like pretty much sober at that point. I did my meditation practice, and then I just like got into the day. I felt completely fine. But having said that, as the weeks went on and it was getting closer and closer to my ceremony, and I was like organizing my bits and pieces, taking time off, like organizing to have time off work, and getting my like bedding sorted to take to the retreat center and doing all of that, I started to feel again like, what is this going to be like, And they said like your streaming dose is a good like meeting with the experience, but don't take for granted what 8 grams feels like, because tripling or doubling that dose, whatever you end up doing on the night, is like is not necessarily going to be like that plus more. It could be a completely different experience. So yeah, I guess there was some anxiety coming up, and the big one, which is super interesting, is because I had heard that Iboga can like radically shift people's lives, like radically. They go into this experience and they confront whatever it is that they've been ignoring, and then they come out of it and like all make all these big changes, and upon reflection, like the I suppose trip reports that I'd been reading, or experience reports that I had been reading, people had reflected that, yeah, I didn't think that was going to happen, but the Iboga showed me something and I couldn't unsee it. So weirdly, the thing that was coming up for me and freaking me out was like, what if I go in there and I realize that my boyfriend Brad is like not my guy, and then I have to come out and break up with him, which is like such a specific neuroses. And if you've listened to my other podcasts on big experiences, like my Vipassana one, you'll know that like my neuroses are quite specific. In the Vipassana, it was like the friendship neuroses. Like I was worried that my friends didn't like me. And yeah, so with this one, the specific, like the thing that really made me emotional and anxious was like, I don't want to have to come out of this and break up with Brad. Like I love him. We are so happy. I don't want this medicine to show me something that I don't want to see about our relationship. And because you're told that it's, one of those sneaky medicines that will give you a hit of a part of yourself that you've been ignoring, you don't know if that's possible. So I was freaked out by that. And I aired my grievances to my facilitators, and they're kind of, they're not there to like tell you that's not going to happen. Essentially, they're there to say, oh, okay, that's interesting. I wonder why that's coming up. And, when you're like, I'm scared of breaking up with my boyfriend, and then someone says, oh, I wonder why that's coming up. You're like, oh, maybe I'm scared of it because it's going to happen. And anyway, so I worked myself up into a little fit over that. Sorry to interrupt this incredibly important conversation, but there is something I really want to show you. If you are like me and you are constantly questioning the nature of reality and wondering why it feels so weird to be a human, questioning if there's any way to influence this whole thing, then head to my description and find the link to buy me a coffee. When you do that, it supports this work and means I can bring you more of the conversations that answer your burning questions. We're in this together, but I need you to buy me a coffee. All right, that's all. Back to the episode. When it came to the actual ceremony, the intention that I set was simple, and it was to see myself in truth. I guess I want to take this opportunity to read the letter that I wrote myself, like right before we did the flood dose. I was already at the retreat center. I was ready to go. I was in my ceremonial whites. I'd had my last meal for the day. So the letter goes, so dear Dr. Iboga, my intention for this evening's ceremony is to see myself more clearly in truth. I ask that you keep me safe on this journey. Help me in letting go of what no longer serves me. Help me to let go of my anxiety in friendships, See, I told you, things that you think you've handled end up coming up again in your preparation with the microdoses. And whether that is a placebo psychological thing or the actual medicine, who knows? Anyway, sorry. Help me let go of my anxiety in friendships. Help me to trust more in the grand plan of life. Help me to love more deeply and fully. Help me to make decisions with more clarity and confidence. Help me to live up to my potential and put meaningful work into the world. Help me to cultivate a stronger relational field with Brad to see him more clearly in truth. Help me to become more generous and courageous. Help me to accept and love my family more deeply. Help me to prepare for motherhood, to hold more with grace and honesty. Help me become more still and to tell people the truth. Help me to become more community-minded and to draw the right souls into mine and Brad's life. Help me to create my own idea of family from truth, integrity, and love. Help me to birth better ideas into the world, to reach out for collaborators when I need them, and to use my creativity to make the world a more flexible place. Help me to live from my heart and solar plexus, to not overthink, stall, catastrophize, or sabotage, to come into right relationship with my ego. Please help me to build a life that truly feels like my own. Show me what I need to see, teach me what I need to know, help me to feel what I need to feel. With surrender and reverence, Paige. P.S. Please connect me more deeply to my body and my womb. Yeah, once we were all kind of sitting around, we shared our intention, which happens like in a plant ceremony pretty often, if not always. And then I dosed the first 4 grams. And then an hour later, my next 4 grams, which meant I had taken 8 grams in 2 hours, which was the equivalent of my streaming dose. The dosage allocated to me had been 32 grams. For me, I had a blindfold and earplugs, and you're in a bed by yourself, and so you can sit up, you can lie down. Mostly you end up lying down. You end up like pretty paralyzed by the medicine, which is part of it as well, is that it like gives you what they call ataxia, I think, and it's like your muscles kind of stop working. That's another big edge, I suppose, you have to cross. So yeah, my bed was all comfy, blindfold on, earplugs in, and then the experience kind of unfolds, and you get I was getting reminders, like every few hours, like ready for your next dose, how are you feeling? Facilitators are checking in with you very vigilantly and diligently, and you share with them what you can. They assist you if you need it. They also leave you to your pace to work with your own experience. I had some closed-eyed visuals, but the Iboga experience for me was very bodily. It's hard to describe because it was almost void of intellectual insight. For me, it was a very physiological experience. Yeah, I ended up having like quite a challenging journey with the Iboga and purging a lot. And by a lot, I mean from about 4 to 5 hours into a 48-hour experience. Yeah, I was like just purging the entire time. I have not vomited that hard ever. At about the like 4 or 5 hour mark, according to my recollection, I started to feel like nausea. And the natural inclination with nausea, right, is to be like, oh, please go away. Like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do nausea. No one likes nausea. I've never met a person that likes it, and fair enough. I'd be suspect on someone that said, oh, I enjoy nausea. It's kind of like saying I enjoy being exhausted. So the nausea comes on, and it's really hard to like, it's hard to move. It's hard to shift, but it's hard to ignore. And I wonder now in retrospect if this was because I wasn't paying attention to my body, and this was like part of the initiatory teaching of the medicine. I kind of battled with this nausea, and I really wanted it to come up. Like I was ready to purge. I was like, all right, come up. And it wouldn't come up, but it also wouldn't go away. And so you're forced into like accepting and confronting your situation in a really direct and embodied way. You can't think your way out of nausea. You can't you can't ignore it or avoid it. There's no other stimulation at all. You're literally just there, and it's you and your nausea and the fact that your nausea is not peaking, and so it's not ending. This was my experience for pretty much the rest of the ceremonial aspect of the retreat. For those people who don't know, it's a root bark, so it's like it's terrible to eat. Incredible plant, not a nice meal at all. It tastes exactly how you would expect root bark to taste. It's gritty, it's earthy, it's dirty. It tastes like dirt. And we washed it down with soda water, because washing it down with actual water would be like horrific. Soda water is like the probably only thing that makes it possible. And at a certain point, you can't eat the raw bark anymore, so you take it in capsules. But you also don't want to be taking the whole flood dose in capsules, because that amount of gelatin capsules in your stomach, I assume, is not a nice feeling. So they have this thing called TA extract, which is the all the alkaloids extracted from the iboga. It's not ibogaine, but they put it in a capsule, and that's how you get the rest of your dosage down when you are struggling like I was with nausea and couldn't possibly eat more dirt. The only thing that would help me to purge was to eat more iboga. And initially, it was just like the smell of it that would make me purge. And so, like I said, I was battling this nausea for ages. And I couldn't get it out. It wouldn't like break through its threshold and come out of me. And then it was suggested, well, maybe you should eat some more iboga, which is the craziest thing. But if you've done plant medicine, you know, like crazy is crazy. You got to do crazy things to navigate it sometimes. And as the facilitator went off to go and get me more to serve me, I purged. Like the thought of it at that point, the thought of eating more bark made me vomit. That's happening. And I'm purging and I'm feeling better, and then a nausea's hitting me again like a massive wave immediately, just like, relief, and then boom, more nausea. Okay, great, here we are again. Same thing. All right, well, why don't you eat some more iboga? Just the thought of it, purge, done. Okay, good. A couple of minutes of chill in my body, and then back into like the wave of nausea. I managed to get through like a few rounds of not having to eat iboga anymore to purge, but to just think of it, and then it would get the nausea out of my system, physically out of my system. But then that started not being enough, so I started to actually have to like taste the tip of the spoon with the bark on it, because the TA extract capsules are not going to make you purge. And like at this point, I'd eaten 32 grams of iboga, and I was like, I didn't need to be higher, I didn't need more, I just needed to get the nausea. I needed to work with the nausea. You try not to overthink it, but you can't help but think like, what is this teaching me? And that is the craziest thing about at least my experience with iboga, is that it is not intellectual. The teachings are not the kind of insight that we're used to having in personal development and self-work and transformation. I think like that can make it harder until you just surrender to that and go, I don't need to understand. And to be honest, I'm not sure that I ever got to that point in the ceremony where I was like, I don't need to understand this. I think I was just really fighting with this nausea. Yeah, I was just like eating tiny bits on the end of a spoon of the bark, and then purging. And then before I knew it, like eating those tiny bits wasn't enough to purge. And so I had to eat like a full teaspoon, and then I would purge. So I wasn't ingesting and absorbing and metabolizing any more medicine, but I was taking more medicine to then get the whatever needed to come out of my system. And it was literally that for almost 48 hours. I'm hesitant to say more, actually. I got a ping, like, I don't need to share more, because it's, you know, everybody needs to have their own experience with this medicine, and it is very different for everybody, and I don't want my experience to influence a decision to either go for or not go for this initiation. But yeah, it's safe to say, like, I had a purgy time, and it was, it required me to really pull out the warrior, really like dig in to the warrior. But, you know, time rolls forward as it usually does, even in the plant medicine space where time is kind of a weird concept. And the sun rose, and then it set again, and then it rose, and things calmed down. And I was able to like settle back down and lie back down in my bed. I'd been upright for quite some time with my trusty bucket, and yeah, and the other thing is there's like a lot of silence too. That's worth mentioning. At least in my experience, is there was a little bit of Bwiti music playing on a speaker, but it's not like ayahuasca where there's like singing and chanting and tra-la-la-la-ing. It wasn't like that at all. It was very silent darkness vibes. So as I was laying back down right at the end, I was given the invitation to sort what I wanted to take with me and what I didn't, as the kind of like ceremony was coming to a close. And I just had a visual of two laundry baskets, and one of them was one of them was color, and then one of them was like decrepit and old and kind of like barnacle-y. And I just had this symbolism playing out in my mind's eye of putting things that I no longer wanted, like pulling like dirty rags out of myself and putting those dirty rags that I no longer wanted in the barnacle basket, and then pulling colorful, like very vivid colorful scarves and ribbons out of myself that I wanted to put in the colorful basket. And that was just sorting through what I wanted to take and what I didn't want to take. Yeah, and then things settle even further. You're kind of like drifting in and out of this state of like awakeness, but also not like tired, like really tired, physically and mentally. It's a lot of stimulation. And then, the sun, they opened the curtains, and it was time to go and get some food. So we had a very silent and plain dish of chicken and rice, which is a Bwiti meal. Yeah, and then things to kind of start to recalibrate. Not like, again, not intellectual things, but your body starts to feel different. And for me, like my body felt different because I had been purging for so long. And it's worth saying that everybody who I journeyed with had a very different experience. And so, again, if you have made it this far and you're listening to this and you're wondering like, oh, do I want to embark on, or do you know, like you're curious, then just know that, again, like this is my personal experience, and it's highly likely that yours will not be anything like mine. Yeah, the integration is obviously a big process. I'm still very much in it. They say that it takes you 3 years to integrate, and there's different stops along the way, 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months, 3 years. And yeah, like I said earlier, I think that a lot of what I wrote in that letter to Dr. Iboga has in their own ways come to fruition. And whether that's because I wrote it down and I paid attention to it in preparation for the ceremony, or whether it's because my being interacted with the alkaloids of the Iboga bark, and that had some like lock and key effect and shifted my reality entirely. Who knows? This is the whole thing of we don't know. I'm so glad I did it. I wouldn't recommend it to anyone, but I trust that if you're listening to this, then you are smart enough to make your own decisions around like what initiatory or transformative experiences you want to have. I felt really powerful afterwards, and I felt really proud of myself. Work with the discomfort of the unknown is a positive thing, because that is what life is like. It's unknown, it's uncertain. You have no idea. That's kind of it. That was my journey with Iboga. Thanks so much for making it to the end of the episode. I trust you had a good time. So let's stay in touch. I have Instagram, I have TikTok, I have Substack. All of those links can be found in the description, and I would absolutely love to hear from you. I also really enjoy when you get involved in the comments on the episode. It lets me know what you're thinking, what's inspiring you, what your questions are, what guests I might want to get on next. So please feel free to hit me up in the comments. You can hit the like and subscribe button. There's a little bell button too, which means that you'll get notified when I drop a new episode, which at the moment is twice weekly. And if you really love this content, then please buy me a coffee. There is a link for you to donate to the show in the description as well. A little goes a long way, and it really does support me to bring the conversations to your eyes and your ears that answer the burning questions. Well, no promises that we'll answer the burning questions, but at least we'll be asking them together. So buy me a coffee, or 2 or 3. I'll take whatever I can get. All right, see you on the next one.